Alright, let's try to run this first without changing the output first. The output is still inside the main, and and, and 70. So you still so in it works. So we have managed to extract the code in the main into a function, and we have managed to pass our array successfully. So now let's try to create another function, which is to output. So okay, we copy the code here, and then we create function void. Remember, when working with array, the return type function return type will always be void. Okay, and then animations for v. Right. So now, similar as previously, we are going to we are going to accept two arrays and one variable. So string name. So I'm going to use a different name in my function, int marks, but name marks. So and also int size. So accept this. Now I have to change this into name, this into mark, and then copy this, see, and put it as prototype. So don't forget semicolon, delete the names, maintain the square bracket, right? And then calling function call, you send games to the name, so you send exactly the same. Okay. See, the variable that I use, the name variable name here is the same as here, but they are not the same. Okay, because this all the variables inside here will be gone, will be no longer there once the function exited. But because we pass the array, because we are working with array, we are actually passing we pass to the name, we are actually passing the address of the first element of student name to this function. Okay, so when it comes to this function, alright, when it comes to this function, it will start to work with the first address. So remember, array is allocated, the elements are located in adjacent memory. So once you got the first address, when you move, you are moving towards the other elements. Okay, as long as you are moving within the size of the array. Okay, right. Okay, so let's try running this again. Compile and run. So try run. Okay, so now you are able to write to input and output array using functions, and you pass the array through the functions. Okay, so let's look at the slides. So in this case, when you pass an array to a function, it's common to pass the array size and the array name. Okay, you don't need to put the square bracket for the function call like this. But in your declaration function header, you need to have all these names and the square bracket. So in your prototype header, you only need to have the data type and the square bracket for array and the data type for other variables. Okay, so when it comes to the function headers, you can see the difference. You just delete the names. Okay. Okay, the example in 7.17 is actually about showing values, showing the array values. So they have initialized the array with in 8 values, and then they pass it through function show values, pass numbers and array size, and then when you go to void show values, you can see it set as array and normal variable. So for integer index, you declare a variable index equal to 0, index smaller than size, index plus plus, see out nums. Okay, so when it goes back, it's still then after this ended, it goes back to the mean. So the things get printed. So array names in functions are like reference variables, as I mentioned. So whatever you change in the function actually is actually reflected in the actual array. So just now we have in this example, we have student array student name in the main, and we have name in the input array. They are they are there are two names referring to the same memory address, like reference variable. Remember, right? So whatever you do inside the function will be reflected in the actual array. So be careful when you're working with array. Okay, next is two-dimensional array. We have been doing so far with one array. So it's going when we are working with one-dimensional array, we are working on arrays going to the right, which a row. Uh, One row only, so not we are working on one row but many columns. Okay, that's one dimensional array. When it comes to two dimensional arrays, we are working with row and columns, which means that we have more rows now. Just now we only works on columns, now a few now different columns, but still within one row. Now we are working with columns in many rows. Okay, so when you have a two-dimensional array, you will have two square brackets. The first square bracket specify the number of rows, the number of lines, and the second square bracket specify the number of columns. The so one specify the height, the rows specify the height, the columns specify the width. Okay, right. So this is how your two-dimensional array can be illustrated. So you have if you declare rows as 4 and columns as 3, you will get something like this. This is just an illustration, and you have this is exams rows and columns. So the array exams, which have 4 rows and 3 columns, so it will look something like this. So each of the cell will have their own coordinates or their own row and columns value. For this one, you have exam row 0 column 0, exam row 0 column 1, exam row 0 column 2. Okay, so the same thing for the next row, become exams 1 row 1 column 0. So I think you understand this. So in order to access any of these elements, okay, elements inside two-dimensional array, you need to specify the subscript or the elements. Okay, so if you are talking about exams 2 2, you are looking at this cell or this element. So if you do something like this, you are telling that in this element store the value 86. Okay, This is a two-dimensional program in 7.21. Okay, you can have a look, but we'll try on our own something first. Okay. Remember, if you're talking about an array is about having more multiple value with the same data type. So in this case, if you have two-dimensional array with a number of rows and columns, all have to be in the same data type. We cannot mix data type. So if it's integer, it's integer. Let's say I want to store the test 1 marks, test 2 marks, assignment 1 marks, assignment 2 marks of of students in one class that have uh, 10 people. Okay, so I have to store for each of them 4 marks. Test 1, test 2, assignment 1, assignment 2. Okay, so and I need to store the marks for each of them, 10 of them. So it since I'm working with the marks are integer, so I cannot use student name as part of my array, because I need to use integer value. So I need to use student ID. So the metric number, so integer value. So my 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 array would be int class. I will say class A, because I'm putting the marks for the whole class. So this array is actually a mark contains the record for each student in my whole class. So two-dimensional, so 2 square brackets. Oops, sorry. So what is the size? So just now I said I have four marks. I have test 1, test 2, assignment 1 and assignment 2. That's 4 marks to be entered, plus the student ID. So I have 5 elements, 5 columns to be stored. So for each person, I need to allocate 5 columns. So how many people in the class that I'm recording? 10 people. So there will be 10 rows, where for each rows they will have 5 columns that consist of the student ID, test 1 mark, test 2 marks, assignment 1 marks and assignment 2 marks. Okay, so let's try this out. So okay, to access elements in two-dimensional array, you will need 2 for loops. Okay, so mti okay equal to 0, I smaller than something. So we'll just put something first, because I want to explain to you. I plus plus, and the other one for int j equal to 0, j smaller than any value at the moment, j plus plus. Okay, so what do we put here? Okay, so for when we are working with 2D array, the outer loop is your row, so you put 10 here, and the inner loop is your column, so you put 5 here. Alright, so what happened is, for inti equal to 0, then you can put this. Okay, and let me finish this first. Okay, so now what I'm doing is I'm going to ask the user to enter the detail for student number 1, if I is equal to 0, and then I'll put the student ID. So the way I access this is I will use I and J. Okay, so I'll do the same thing for the remaining.